Folks, welcome back to What's Trainwreck Watching, and it is Wednesday, and unless you've been living on an Outer Rim planet, you know we are breaking down Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus, our favorite Jedi. So let's get our favorite panel in here. Of course, we've got your friend, my friend, our friend, Jake, and the expert, the resident Wikipedia master, Michael Parthum. Gents, typically I bring us in here. I ask us how we enjoyed this weekly episode. I want to ask you something first. Did either of you see or hear any rumors going into this week's episode?
Not a one.
Nope.
Okay, because I did see a couple days ago that there were going to be some Clone Wars flashbacks. So I want to start off the discussion just talking about that as the opening couple scenes and some parallels there of this week's episode, episode 4 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. We get Obi rescued, obviously, from his very dangerous fire situation. And he is in the Bacta-tank. And I was expecting that this would be when we were going to get him. Again, people talking about Clone Wars flashbacks. I was getting ready for Hayden Christensen and Ian McGregor back, fresh off Geonosis, ready to lay down the smackdown on some General Grievous and some troops. We didn't end up getting that. But with that said, I thought the opening sequence and the overall episode took us on a nice ride, Jake.
Yeah, it's still the interesting thing to me about that first part is still just how strong their connection is even 10 years later, because they've kind of hinted at that throughout this whole series, like that whether Obi knew it or not, they've still been super connected through there. He obviously didn't know it. I mean, he just found this information out a couple weeks ago, however long this timeline's been. So seeing that Force connection is still the most interesting to me, and still I feel like there's something significant that's going to happen because of it, even I guess more significant than what we got in this episode and everything else. But that connection is still very strong between those two, and I'm looking forward to see them explore that further. I mean, we only got 2 episodes left, but there's still got to be another place that they can explore that.
Well, I would say I'm not so sure if is it a Force connection or are they both just having PTSD flashbacks, given that they just encountered each other for the first time in about 10 years, and it's bringing back all these memories and now these new memories that Obi-Wan is having with these quotes ringing in his head, "I am what you made me," and all this stuff.
That's a great question. Oh, Maniac, you're muted, bud.
I went off the rock there. I went off the grid. But yeah, I was saying he's hurt Obi-Wan right now. Yeah, we obviously just had the face down with Vader. We saw that Obi-Wan's not quite the sprite young lad he used to be when he was hopping down from rooftops to confront General Grievous in front of like 100 troops. With that said, yeah, he's talking on the ship, and she says, some of it is mental. Some of it is like your mental well-being as well, for just, needing to recover from that experience. So we see him doing that. We see him doing that in the Bacta-tank, obviously. And then we get a great scene where they're kind of cutting between him and Anakin, him and Vader, and they're showing, their wounds in the Bacta-tank. And then, obviously, that arm scene was pretty handy, I guess you could say, if you're looking for a pun. But
always looking for a pun.
If I had to give this episode a title, I would say How Ben Got His Swagger Back. Because obviously, we saw him at his bottom at the end of last episode. It's a clear-cut storyline that we have here. He wakes up, the first thing that he asks is, "Where's Leia?" We turned out that Leia is on HQ Inquisitorius, which is obviously not a great spot to be. With that said, I was a little ashamed of the no shields just because they're so cocky, honestly.
Well, they wouldn't expect a Jedi to just come, waltzing down their front door, but they didn't count on, Jedi being so sneaky and resourceful.
That is true. They typically think they're what? They're their prey, right, Micah?
Yeah,
exactly.
They go looking for Jedi instead of the other way around, and they expect a Jedi to, like Obi-Wan, be cut off from the Force, have thrown their lightsaber away somewhere and not exactly be the most formidable foes.
Well, and gives Tala, she's just so resourceful, just so quick-witted, being able to maneuver through that situation where she's getting, kind of scolded, reprimanded, like, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be an officer here. And just pulling out of her bag of tricks, just using I guess all you need to do to convince the Empire is you get a nice disguise and a forceful tone, and you're going to be able to get where you want to go. But really, like, just being able to pull off her super spy shit. It was really nice spotlight on her. I was wondering how much more of her we were going to get going forward, and it was great to see her kind of obviously directly involved in this whole mission, this whole episode.
Well, that's how you get anywhere. You just act like you belong. You wear the right uniform and maybe
Fake it till you make it.
Password, press pass or whatever.
Or as they say in episode 6, when they're flying by the Imperial blockade above Endor, fly casual. Let's go. And speaking of flying casual, so let's set the tone here. Obi-Wan obviously gets to recover, and we finally get O'Shea Jackson Jr., a.k.a. Ice Cube Jr., as Roken. I thought, honestly, as far as, because he's kind of like an artist. He's obviously been in movies, too. I didn't think he stood out that much. Like, he wasn't a sore thumb. I thought he was a solid character. It felt like he was a member of the rebellion. I would say that his flip from, like, the Emperor or the Empire took, like, everything from me to, like, all right, we're going after him. Like, was a little bit quick, but I like the character overall.
I was expecting a little more explanation to be needed for him to go at it, but I think that's just showing like how high his morality is, and just knowing like there's a 10-year-old girl or however old she is on that ship and they need to go save her, and that was more than enough for him to be there. I'm excited to see what we get from him. I'm assuming in the future weeks too, but love seeing Ice Cube Jr. Involved in the Disney universe, the Star Wars universe. This was it's a cool thing to see the beginnings of the rebellion still. Like we talked about it, I think a couple weeks ago, just seeing like the little spots where you can see these groups forming up. And this is obviously one of those spots where he has been in charge. And that's essentially what that's going to turn into, you would assume. So it was a nice little spot, and I'm excited to see what they've got for him going forward too. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, it was kind of a quick flip for him as far as his attitude and whether
Quickest
he
flip
wanted
I've ever
to
seen.
help Obi-Wan or not.
Like the Big Show turning heel.
I mean, at first, it looks like most people's attitude would be towards Jedi. They know who the Inquisitors are, and they know they're hunting Jedi. And the Jedi essentially have a big target, a scarlet letter on them at all times. So, and that's reflected a little bit in Uncle Owen, basically wanting nothing to do with Obi-Wan and him being near Luke and whatnot, because it's just inviting trouble. But then he thinks about it for a second, and it's like, my wife was one of these people, and despite the fact that I lost her, she would probably want me to help the 10-year-old girl. So I'll help Obi-Wan.
I looked at it a little bit of what you're both saying, that like, yeah, this is a cause of her. Also, Roken is a little broken himself. He's gotten obviously he's on this pathway or whatever's happened, but he's got to find a cause for himself. Because like you said, he lost his wife, looking for that source of energy. So anyways, he's going to fuel this rescue. So Leia is on Fortress Inquisitorius, which again is kind of like a, a skyscraper in the middle of the water there. Half of it's
the Legion of Doom, right? It's the Legion of Doom.
Yeah, that's what it felt like to me.
Now, this is, again, we've talked about this in Obi-Wan, and we were talking about how it happened in Rogue One. They can do things that kind of add on to the future storyline, and I think making Leia versus, like, stormtroopers, like, just shit-talking stormtroopers, like, so by the time she's done this in A New Hope, like, this is basically, like, her 50th rodeo. Like, this is not even, like, could not be... And you see the roots of that happening here, whether she's just shit-talking the stormtroopers or even Reva kind of trying to pull a fast one on her. What did you think? I thought, the Leia actress, I unfortunately forget her name. I know I'm blowing it again, but I thought she killed again. I think it's like Vivian something. I'm looking it up now. But I thought she killed it again and continues to add to that lore. Vivian Blair as the Leia Organa character.
I mean, like you said, adding into giving us more reasons why Leia was so determined and so capable of, she obviously was very ready to be, to take action in A New Hope and everything else. And this is kind of giving us that little bit extra bit of lore. It's been such a treat. I mean, I was just still going back to the first episode, so surprised that we were even getting it in the first place. And just now we're still clearly she is the focus of this show. It's been the whole reason why they've been on this adventure at all. It's been such a treat to just have her.
You saw Luke in the trailers. You didn't even see Leia.
No, that's what I mean. I thought I had missed something because I try to avoid all those spoilers and everything. I was like, damn, did everybody else know this going on? And so when you told me you had, and I was like, okay, we're on the same track here. I had no idea that was happening. And she's been the best part. I've seen. So, are we gonna talk a little bit about like what this I've seen like mixed reviews coming out of this show coming up too, and her character has been one of the things, and I just don't understand it. I feel like she's been a treat the whole time. Maybe people just don't like smart 10-year-olds or 10-year-olds that are smarter than the other characters, but I feel like it tracks for what we know about her going forward.
Think back to Game of Thrones, the end of season 6 and season 7. Who was that little girl that was a House Mormont? Who was the?
Lyanna Mormont. Lyanna Mormont.
Yeah, a little 10-year-old badass. I mean, that who can't love those kinds of characters? And I also love the little foreshadowing there when Reva is doing the Force interrogation, and Leia is very strong and resisting it, and Reva doesn't immediately detect that she's Force sensitive, but she knows that she's strong enough to resist Force interrogation.
Oh yeah, great foreshadowing there, no doubt about it. And we will get to the critical reception of this show because that is something to discuss at the end of this review, and I want to see your guys' thoughts on it. But we got to get into this escape plan. No intention on the copyright for Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. Hold on, what was my point here? Parthum, you called it a standard break Princess Leia out of an Imperial facility without knowing you're being tracked story. How did you think this played out compared with A New Hope?
Well, I mean, in A New Hope, they weren't necessarily trying to rescue the princess. They were just trying to deliver the plans to Alderaan and got caught in the wrong tractor beam, so to speak. And the princess just happened to be in there and said, well, while we're here, why don't we just rescue the princess, not knowing that Vader had surmised, oh, they're here for the princess. Let's make it a little easy for them and let them escape. Even if it seems hard to Han, it was too easy for Leia because she's seen all this before. And I don't know if Reva necessarily let them escape or if this was her plan B, but this is definitely something. And this is something that Vader would, once he realized what Reva's plan was, oh, you can do that. Sometimes you can win by losing, by letting him go. You can get more out of this. So it's kind of like when the FBI, gets somebody and rather than, captures them, they just let them go back to their hive or whatever so they can get the big fish.
This seems like it does seem like, not to jump ahead, but it does seem like Reva's last shot coming up too, though. Like he's like, as much as he's giving her credit, he's also like, listen, this shit better work though. You know what I'm saying? But going back to the heist and everything else, it is hilarious that they keep going back to the similar tropes and everything, but it works. Like it was an exciting episode from the fact that we finally got to see, as you talked about, Ben getting his swagger back, right? Like he got pushed. He was finally in a position where he didn't really have a choice. And I thought that made us remember that he's not just this inept old man, right? Like he has this resourcefulness. He has these talents that are still in there somewhere. And I feel like it did that was the point of this episode to me. Show us that he still has it.
There was that one scene where he's trying to sneak around. There's two troopers that Obi-Wan wants to sneak around, and he does a little noise trick like off in the distance one way so he can sneak back by the other, just like in A New Hope, of course. But then push comes to shove and the troopers are in his face and he goes back to twirling lightsaber prequels Obi-Wan. I saw a take on that. I saw a take on that. It's like they took Obi-Wan from the prequels and put him into the original trilogy with stormtroopers in an Empire setting, so it's like the perfect bridge from the prequels and the originals.
Yes.
That's awesome.
No, exactly. And so obviously we're getting, by the way, a theme of this episode could have been two stormtroopers are absolutely incompetent. There were multiple times, whether they were guarding Leia, whether they were walking down the hallway, whether they were doing anything, where it was just two stormtroopers and they got absolutely taken out of nowhere. By the way, hysterical scene when Tala goes in for the distraction during the escape. Obi-Wan kind of finds himself in a situation where, he kind of needs a distraction. So Tala goes in and goes face to face with Reva. And what was and basically Reva's subordinate comes in and just like finds Reva in the middle of child torture. And she's like, sorry, this couldn't wait for your child torture. And Reva had to do okay. And it was just ridiculous. It just shows the Empire ruthlessness, craziness. Obviously torturing children is a little bit over the top, but they got to hammer home. I mean, these are the bad guys. Because Reva and the Inquisitors, in a weird way, are kind of likable. Am I right?
I mean, I feel for them for the pressure that they clearly have on them, right? And there's the thing about the Empire in general is like I'm not an Empire sympathizer by any means, but we've talked about it in the past couple episodes. You can see why people think they're doing the right thing and why, like, the PR spin of it. And these Inquisitors, whether they're truly evil or just believe that the Jedi were the cause of all this chaos in the universe, they feel just as justified. They feel justified in their actions, whether they're right or wrong. And I feel like there's some of them who are kind of like, they just don't realize like the evil that they know is worse than the evil that they're hunting. And
yes,
that's kind of like they're not dealing with the lesser of two evils. But I feel like, at least like the fifth brother specifically, I feel like he's definitely we haven't got enough character development with him, but he gives me that energy where he's not like this terrible, horrible human being. He's just trying to do his job. He's just getting his paycheck and trying to serve what he thinks is a better cause. And there's a lot of people in the galaxy that think this is the better cause. It's only 10 years out. We haven't seen all this destruction. We haven't seen Alderaan get destroyed or anything, obviously. Once those things that's a bridge gone too far once you get to that point. But right now it's still in that middle ground where everybody's just super unsure. So that's like the interesting thing to me with the dynamics that are going on with everybody involved.
I see YouTube videos where, half jokingly probably, the Empire wasn't wrong, kind of like Thanos wasn't wrong and whatnot. Listen, when you're dragging innocent, settlers and farmers through the streets and cutting off hands, I think it's pretty clear who is the evil people here and who aren't.
That's true. Facts,
plain and simple. So obviously we get our distraction, and we're winding down the episode here. This gets a little wonky because it's a classic scenario. Like, it was just like in episode 2, when the alarm is ringing in the city and all the bounties are going out on Obi-Wan. Right now, the alarm is just blaring at Fortress Inquisitorius, and we've got trenchcoat Obi-Wan walking through with Tala and Leia.
That was pretty conspicuous. Conspicuous. He was trying to hide Leia under there.
Over the top it was. Because clearly they weren't trying to, they're being wonky with it. Like, it looked ridiculous.
We talk about stormtroopers being incompetent. They must be so distracted by their jobs. They're not seeing that Obi-Wan has 4 legs underneath this trench coat.
I was saying the 4 legs.
Well, they were keeping Leia on the inside, between them, I guess, trying to sort of hide her. But it's I don't know.
It was better. It was a better disguise than whatever the earlier episode is when he literally changed out of his disguise into his Jedi garb.
Yes,
episode 1, right? At least it's
much better. Right? Much better than when he said he needed to go undercover and literally dressed up like a Jedi.
Well, let's go back a second because you had the. Oh yeah.
Again, it just looks like it literally just had a second body on his side.
But let's go back a second. You had the graphic there about the Jedi tomb, which was pretty disturbing. And Obi-Wan
how hard did this hit for you guys? Because I didn't recognize them all right away. But once I looked it up.
These might have been some people, characters from Legends novels or some secondary content that we're not as familiar with.
There was one from Clone Wars that had an episode with Ahsoka, Tara Sinube, where he had a whole episode where Ahsoka lost her lightsaber and he helped her find it.
Okay, but that's kind of a deep. These are a lot of deep cut characters, I would think. Nobody that just
and they were weathered and stuff, so you couldn't really see them. It was crazy. But yeah, that scene hit. Jake, did that scene hit for you, or was it a little bit lost in not recognizing him?
I couldn't recognize anybody off rip, but it was still just heavy. Just putting yourself in Obi-Wan's shoes to walk through, and he obviously, whether he knows these people personally or knows of them through the order, or just of who is coming through the order and everything, or just even if he has no idea who they are, but knowing that they're Jedi and just throwing him back into that, trying to refocus on the mission is difficult. I'm sure it was difficult for him after that, but it kind of also could give you patience, this shit and do what's right. It was this show has been dark as hell. Every episode has a really dark moment that you can point and be like, I've never seen anything like that in a Star Wars show. That's a special kind of dark that they're going to, and this was definitely that one for me. Obi-Wan, that situation in that room.
Now, the one thought that comes to my mind is, were all these Jedi the ones that were hunted after Order 66? Is that why we don't recognize them? Because all the ones we are familiar with got offed right at the end of the Clone Wars when the Emperor gave the order, so to speak.
Real quick side quest. Which episode 3 Jedi had like the most brutal Order 66 death? I gotta go. Okay, Kit Fisto's brutal, and he was a fan favorite, no doubt about it. My vote's gotta go for Ki-Adi-Mundi when they're on that bridge in the snow, and he's like,
true.
"Come on!" And like they don't even show him; they just show their feet like planting instead of running, and it's just my god, it's so brutal.
Yeah,
Aliyah Sakura, because I mean, she just got hit multiple times at point blank range, and they just kept firing. I mean, even when she was down,
what the hell was that?
They just pumped more into her. It's like, I don't know.
Seriously, JR would have been saying, "Someone get out here and stop this." Okay, but hey, so we're winding down. Obi-Wan's shocker makes the escape. So Riva gets the tracker on it. And we see, was anybody else sweating and tensing up a little bit with the angry Vader fast walk?
I have never heard Vader talk like that in such a high, angry voice. Like, he's been angry, but he's usually just cool about it in this very ominous tone.
Yes, he says it more in like an executive, like, who's already had time to think about it tone. Like, he was just pissy and like furious. The other thing, people were saying he went in there straight like Vince McMahon. I got to look at that clip again. I got to see if we can overlay that music.
I don't think he was that swaggy, but
no chance in Mustafar, you've got.
But that is like the that is what I'm hoping whenever we get Hayden to finally show up in here. That is like the Hayden influence, right? Like the spicy Anakin, just like with a little bit more fire in there. Yeah, yes. that was more of that coming out rather than the, like you said, the executive, which that's a CEO Vader. It was not
when you see Kylo Ren, as much as the sequel trilogy stunk, like when you see Kylo Ren in like Force Awakens, just like hammering at the console and just like blowing up, like that was hysterical. The first time you saw that, you're like, oh, that's what a kid Vader would like act like, you know? Like, and now you're kind of seeing like a little reckless with the personnel, like a little, out of sorts. So I like that we're seeing it. But yeah, great scene. I gotta go rewatch just that ending scene again. Just real quick, and again, we all read our recaps and our everything to kind of get ready for this show. The one thing I saw was, what if Obi-Wan did just take Leia right back to Alderaan? Like, that whole plan would just be foiled.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
I don't think Reva has a whole plan. I think
it definitely wasn't the plan A. It was definitely the plan B.
Yeah, the tracker in Lola, which I think we find out at the end there, was definitely not what she was like counting on. There's no way that was what she was counting on in my mind. I don't know what you thought, Mike, but there is no way in my mind.
In episode 2, I was expecting them to just basically go back to Alderaan, but they're drawing out the Leia kidnapping and rescue over a couple more episodes. So I'm interested to see where they're going to go in the last 2 episodes. There's going to be some kind of final confrontation, and the other thing I'm still looking forward to is Obi-Wan, tapping into the Force and contacting Qui-Gon in some way.
Mm-hmm. And I also wonder how we end up back to Tatooine, because I feel like that's where all roads lead to Tatooine in the Star Wars universe.
It's funny. You mentioned earlier little Luke in the trailer and thinking that's the way we're going to go. Literally, all we've seen of Luke is what was in the trailer, and we're probably not going to see much more, maybe a small glimpse in the final episode. And maybe if there's a second season of Obi-Wan community, that's where he meets Luke and gets to know him a little bit, and they go off on some other adventure not involving Darth Vader, which would be less cool. But you can't have a confrontation on Tatooine because A, Vader has to know he's not there, not know he's there, and B, I mean, he doesn't want to even go back there because of memories and stuff.
And we're not talking about Kid Cudi, folks.
That is a Vince walk. If he got the arms moving a little bit too.
Yeah, I gotta get the we gotta get that overlaid with the music for sure. But yeah, solid episode, very short episode. Something that I also saw noted was basically one episode in all these limited series, whether it's been Marvel or Star Wars, have been a little bit more significantly short. This episode, I think, without the credits and intro, only timed out at about 34 minutes. So when you time out the 3 segments and basically Obi-Wan healing up, going on the rescue, and then completing the rescue, the episode was over. So we have 2 episodes left. And we'll talk about it. I mean, let's face it, it's just like wrestling, right? it's almost like when you love something so much, the criticism of it will be like more, significant because you care about it, things like that. I think we've all kind of enjoyed it for the most part. Obi-Wan, we've had our criticisms, like the Leia chase scene in episode 1 was ridiculous. We all agree. And the trench coat escape was a little wonky. And yeah, Obi-Wan's been like a little clueless at times, no doubt about it, but maybe that's part of the series. And again, outside of that, I've enjoyed everything else that this series has given me as a Star Wars fan. It doesn't make me feel stupid like the sequel trilogy did at times. It doesn't make me feel like these characters are worthless like the sequel trilogy did at times. So I'm just happy to see, like the legacy of these characters and everything around them being built. So I've enjoyed, again, my point being, I don't know what you guys have on that front, what you've seen on the criticism front, and what your takes are on that.
So my 3 things on the criticism that I saw that I have not enjoyed. The one you just touched on was the Obi-Wan being inept, and that's definitely the whole point of the first 3 episodes, the show that he is not a build back now. I don't understand why that was a thing. The one complaint about Reva being a bad villain, and being a bad main villain, when clearly she's not the main villain of this series. I've seen that all over the place, like her complaining about her as the main villain. Yes, she has the most screen time of them and everything, but we know the hand that is telling her what to do. Like, we know that it's Vader. So that was just wonky to me in general. And then people complaining about the script and the writing and everything. Who's coming? I'm not coming for a Scorsese movie. I don't need some crazy dialogue in a Star Wars movie. It's been more than fine. It's been up to par with every other of the, I would say, the prequels and the regular trilogy in dialogue wise. Like, those 3 criticisms are the ones that stuck out to me, where I've seen the most, and I just don't really, I don't know, I just don't think they're as valid, or it's just too nitpicky for me to actually want to criticize those things.
What is Scorsese going to say, that this isn't cinema either? I mean, come on.
Probably.
But besides the things you touched on, not much criticism from me. It's just wanting to get to the final confrontation. We saw a little bit of a Obi-Wan Vader fight tease, and it's just, you want to get to that last episode, but you have to enjoy the journey. And this was, to use a wrestling parallel, this is one of those weeks where, there's a run-in or just a minor skirmish where that the pay-per-view is coming, and you just have to, wait for the payoff.
Yeah, I agree. Last week we had the DQ finish with Obi-Wan being taken off.
Or the no contest.
The no contest with that. Yeah, this week was cutting a couple of backstage promos on each other.
Little pre-tapes, some pre-tapes this week.
Speaking of promos, we got a little insight into Reva as far as, what her past was. Like, she only said a couple of lines about it, but you can tell that there's a little more to it. And I'm still waiting for the payoff from that very first scene in the series with the Order 66 and the kids getting out of there. She had to be one of those kids.
100%.
That's what makes me wonder if this next episode is going to be a lot of flashbacks, like going into whatever this final confrontation is going to be, because we haven't gotten a lot of like we haven't seen Hayden Christensen yet in his full whatever garb or whatever else. I wonder if that's going to be a point where we start to see like the past for each of these important characters and what's led them to this point, because we've gotten, like you said, the bits and pieces of it, but we should get a complete picture of it before we wrap this first season up, I would assume.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, hey, it's setting up perfect for it. Episode 5, you get Leia returning. You get some kind of Bail reunion with Obi-Wan. And then you get the Reva payoff you were talking about. Episode 6, you fire up a Clone Wars flashback showing Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting up, beside each other. You end the episode with that final confrontation where Obi-Wan re-exits the situation as the master. So yeah, very exciting. Again, not the greatest episode of the series, a little bit more of a vegetable episode. I would say you got to eat your vegetables to get to that meat and dessert, but we'll get there. But hey, make sure you get there with us. Follow along on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud. Any last shout-outs from Fortress Inquisitorius, boys? By the way, Fortress Inquisitorius is basically like Guantanamo Bay. You have no rights there.
Yeah, scary place. Don't want to get caught there.
Would not want a vacation there.
No.
But hey, make sure you get caught with us. Make sure you stay up to date with everything we got going on. It's not about last week's dinner plans. It's not about next weekend's trip to some gorge. It's about next week's episode. I'm assuming it already went.